Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to you all to this CTAC virtual meeting on September 2nd, 2020. Thank you all for being here. That's very much appreciated. If you've taken time out of your busy day to join us, I appreciate that, and we all do. I sincerely hope, trust, and pray that you and all of your loved ones are all weathering and navigating your way through our nation's multiple crises, and you're all doing so very safely, very healthy, and very successfully. Please also always keep all of the unfortunate victims and their loved ones out there because of these crises in your regular prayers and on top of mind, and with some humane and some mutually respectful considerations while you do that. So with that said, I will now gather tonight's meeting started. And tonight we have our new Miss Lisa One, who will manage and control the IT aspects of this virtual meeting. So welcome aboard, Lisa, to our team. And Lisa will now display the rules of engagement for this meeting, for your reading, understanding, and for maintaining order. So please go ahead and bring that up, Lisa. Thank you. So please read through all of that, everyone that can see the screen. For those of you who cannot, let me deal with those of you that are on telephone, particularly the public. If you wish to provide a comment, please get the attention of one of the IT persons online on the call, and they will activate your microphone on your telephone. The rest of you, I presume you can see the screen so you can read the rules of engagement. Mr. Coordinator, is there anything else you'd want to emphasize?
A couple of things to share. There's a raising of the hand button that people are able to use, the members are able to use as well. And also that we just ask that you go through the chair when asking any question. Do you want to go over the approval, how you want to approve the agenda?
Yeah, well, I'm going to take care of that once I get to that item. Yeah. Okay. So with that said, thank you, Lisa. Let's move to the next item, which is I'm now going to ask our coordinator, Mr. Chance, to please confirm quorum for the meeting.
Okay, Chair, before I get started with the quorum, I just wanted to remind everybody about our virtual
etiquette.
Yes, thank you, etiquettes. As we get started, I want to remind everybody about our protocol, and it comes with for our citizens as well. It comes from our bylaws, and also any persons making any slanderous remarks or becoming boisterous or while addressing the CTAC members may be barred from the audience. This is FYI. Our rules of debate also, we just ask every member desiring to speak shall address the chairperson by raising their hand, and upon being recognized, shall confine themselves to the question under debate. Talking on the cell phones during meetings is not prohibited. Ringers, we're asking everybody to silence their phones, and even though we're on virtually, please silence your phones. If you're not speaking, please mute yourselves. And here's just a couple of virtual etiquettes. If you are going to be, if you're on your phone, you have to walk around or leave, please turn your camera off and mute your microphone as well. We just ask that we do the same, hold this meeting in the same consciousness that we would in a regular meeting format, that no food be allowed. If you're seated, then please stay seated. and do the best you can in having your camera eye level as possible. All right. All right. Thank you so much for your attention. And I will go ahead and I will call the roll at this point in time. Alexander Adams. Mai Chow.
Here.
Alan Fishman.
Present.
Susan Gouache.
Present.
Benjamin Hendrick. Jasmine Johnson. Marlon Kelly Sr. Marlon Kelly Sr.
He's muted, but he's here.
Yes.
Here.
Thank you. Antonio Reyes.
Here.
Susan Shine. Lee Swarland. Naomi Wright.
Present.
Vice Chair Daniel Iglesias. Chair Dr. Claudius Carnegie.
Daniel
Present.
Iglesias seems to be there.
Present.
It is, who's here? Danny Iglesias. Oh, he's coming, like he's coming in now. Okay. All right, thank you. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Coordinator. Just to remind everyone that some of the etiquette and rules that the coordinator just highlighted, the most important one is that the meeting will be published on YouTube. So that's why a lot of those rules are very important. All right, so we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is the approval of the agenda. I presume there are some revisions to the agenda. I presume you got the revised agenda out, Mr. Coordinator?
Correct. Everybody has the amended agenda.
Okay, very good. All right, so I'd like to entertain a motion and a seconder for the approval of the agenda, the revised agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Ms. Wright, and a seconder.
Second.
And who's that?
Susanna Gouache.
Okay, thank you, Susanna.
You're
So we
welcome.
have Ms. Wright and Ms. Gouache, Mr. Coordinator. All right, and we're going to short circuit Robert's rule for the approval. So we're just going to deal with opposition. So if there are any opposition to the approval of the agenda, please say nay. If I hear nothing, then the agenda will be unanimously approved. All right, hearing none, the agenda is unanimously approved, Mr. Coordinator, and thank you all. Next, I'd like to move on to the approval of the minutes, and I'd like to entertain a motion and a seconder for the approval of the minutes. And these minutes are from June 30th, 2020. A mover and a seconder, Ms. Wright, and seconder.
Second.
Is that Ms. Gouache again?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right. So any opposition to the approval of these minutes, please say nay. Hearing none, the minutes are unanimously approved. Thank you all for that. And then we'll move on to conduct the rest of the meeting by moving to item number 5, CTAC membership update. Mr. Coordinator, any updates, please?
All right, Chair. As you may or may not know, we do have a shifting of 6 positions at the TPO governing board, and that will affect membership here at CTAC. At this point in time, I will be contacting the 6 members that may be affected. And those 6 members at this point in time I'll be contacting is Marlon Kelly Jr. I'm sorry, Marlon Kelly Sr., Naomi Wright, Dr. Claudius Carnegie, Lee Swerlin, Mike Child, and Antonio Reyes. So I will be in contact with you sometime next week on next steps, because we do have those TPO board members that will be shifting positions.
Or they will have new sponsors, you mean?
There'll be 6 new positions with a TPO board, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So in a nutshell, Mr. Coordinator, what is that process? Just very briefly, you don't have to get into all of the skinny details. What are the steps? What are you going to do after you've spoken to the 6 people, including myself?
Well, right now we're in the process of getting legal assistance, and then
Legal guidance. Okay. Got it.
after I get legal assistance, then I will be in contact with each CTAC member.
Okay. So with that report, there are no new members at this time.
Not at this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Mr. Coordinator. Moving on to the next item, which is a public comment. So those of you who arrived late, we have a new IT person, Ms. Lisa One, and we welcome Ms. Lisa One, of course, to our team. And Lisa, I'm going to ask you now to unmute all of those folks who are not on the screen, so that, and those would be particularly the public, for them to participate in the public comment. So I'm going to give a few seconds to see if there are any response. Otherwise, we'll move on from that. But please open up the mics. Are there any public to comment? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public comment, item number 6. Thank you all for that. And Ms. Lisa, you can remute. Moving on to the next item, number 7. And that item is a 2045 Regional Transportation Plan, or the RTP. And we're going to have Mr. Tiwari Edmondson from the Miami-Dade TPO Regional, he's a Miami-Dade TPO Regional Liaison to take care of that item. Tiwari, you've got the floor, and I presume Lisa will assist you with slides.
Thank you, Dr. Carnegie. Just want to make sure, can everyone hear me? All I need to see is a thumbs up. All right, good. All right, thank you guys for the opportunity to present this presentation of the Regional Transportation Plan. Just to give you a little background, as Dr. Carnegie said, I am the TPO liaison to the CTAC committee. The CTAC committee is a Southeast Florida Transportation Committee. And what I wanted to just go over what the latest document that we produced from this committee, which is the 2045 Regional Transportation Plan. Next slide, please. Now, to give you a little background, what is the CTAC? The CTAC, as I said, is a Southeast Florida Transportation Council, not committee, I'm sorry. And it's a formal partnership of the 3 MPOs, all within the US Census designated Miami urbanized region. So as you can see in the diagram to the right, our region contains Palm Beach, Broward, and the Miami-Dade MPO. Now, this is a formal partnership because I don't know about you, but me personally, I live in Broward. I work in Miami. I'm sure a lot of people in this region, you know, work and live in different counties. And as such, it's very important for us to make sure that our transportation plans are coordinated. You know, we don't know when when I'm going to work in the morning, I don't know where the county line ends. You know, so we want to make sure all our projects are coordinated. Now, this committee also is made up of 1 member from each of the MPOs, from one of the board members, one board member from each MPO, and they meet 2 to 4 times a year to go over regional coordination of all the projects that we're working on. Next slide, please. Now, to give a couple of functions of the CTAC, the CTAC really serves as a forum for policy coordination, and it really undertakes the regional planning efforts. Now, this includes the approval of the regional network map. Of course, we want to see what constitutes a regional trip. That's one of the first things we have to define. We also prioritize the transportation projects in the urbanized area for the Transportation Regional Incentive Program, which is a TRIP program. This program is funded by the state, where it's a designated funding for regional trips, for projects that carry regional trips. And we as a board, we prioritize these projects. We also coordinate a regional public involvement process. And then, as I said, we create the regional long-range transportation plan. Next slide, please. So now, for the RTP vision, so the 2045 RTP vision is really to create a shared regional transportation document that identifies regional needs, funding and policies, and that serve and benefit the entire Southeast region. What this document really does is this document builds on the respective LRTPs. It creates a unified voice for the region, and it's really a document that is a call to action, per se, for our region. It's really a call to action to diversify our current mobility approach and really to connect our land use planning with how we go about mobility approach. Next slide, please. Now, the document was structured in a way to really ask major questions and even come up with bigger answers. With limited land and limited financial resources, we need to be more efficient about what we have right now. So of course, we have to ask questions such as, how do we move our growing population? How do we spend our limited transportation dollars? What infrastructure would be needed? So questions like this is what we really try to cover and address during the document. Next slide, please. Now, steps to creating a plan. And just, technical memorandum was completed for all these steps. The first step was really to come up with the regional goals, objectives, measurements of effectiveness, and the best practice for transit supportive regions. We also wanted to define the multimodal corridors network. We had to define all the waterways, the major corridors, the roadways, and the railways that really constitute a regional trip. We looked into the legislative and funding framework. We also did a scenario planning and a transit propensity analysis. And this was really to look at the effects of land use and how flexible funding from highway to transit will have an effect on the behavior of how people get around in a region. Then we looked into the financial resources that were available for the region by doing an analysis of all the cost feasible long-range transportation plans. And then we also looked into the travel demand modeling. We had to look into this to really forecast what would be the tangible results of running these various scenarios. Next slide, please. So as I said on the first step, we had our goals and our objectives, our performance measures, and how the RTP team really came about with these goals and objectives is they look at all the respective long-range plans, the Palm Beach, Broward, and the Miami-Dade TPO. And they really looked at, what is the main goal? And the main theme of all of our plans and what we all want as a region is really sustainability and quality of life. And the goals that this theme addresses, we want to look at, policies to address multimodal system and land use. We want to look at the health, the environment, and the safety. Of course, we want to look at the economy for a strong economy. And of course, equity and public support. Next slide, please. Now, what are the one major issues that we're facing? So the first major issue that we all know that we're facing is we have a growing population. South Florida, our region is attracting people every single day. So we forecasted by 2045, we're going to have 7.5 million more people using our roadways. Of course, this is going to lead to more congestion, a lot more demand on our transportation system. And then along with that, we have the mismatch investments. When you look through all the plans, the region as a whole, we're really prioritizing transit. But then once we did the analysis of where our funds and our monies are going in our cost feasible plans, I think it's like 14% of the funded projects in our cost feasible plans go to transit or multimodal systems management types projects. So there's a disconnect in what we as a region prioritize and what we want, and really what we're allowed to spend those funds on. So, that's something that we wanted to look at and address. And then, of course, we have this limited access issue. Right now with the development patterns or the trend, the current development patterns that we've had up to this point is not transit supportive per se. You know, I think if we follow the trend, you know, going up to 2045, you know, 5% of people will have access to high capacity transit from their homes, and 10% of people will have access to high capacity transit from their jobs. So, you know, we want to really change this forecast and change the outlook for a region. Next slide, please. Now, how did we go about doing this? How do you go about the scenario planning? So to take a technical look, what we did is the RTAC, which is a subcommittee, it's a technical subcommittee of the CTAC. They looked at the high capacity transit needs. You know, we looked at the region, looked at different scenarios of transit. You know, what regional scale transit is needed? You know, what growth is needed? And then we looked at the corridors where these may be needed. And not only that, we looked at the growth and development in respect to these transit corridors. You know, what changes or policies are needed to ensure that wherever we put this investment in these high capacity corridors, we have transit oriented development to get the most bang out of our buck per se. And then of course we had to look at the financial and legislative framework. You know, with gas taxes going down, that resource is dwindling away. We need to start looking at, you know, what other new resources we can do, you know, whether it be VMT, you know, just we need to look at other resources, and we have to look at also how can we flex the resources we have now. You know, how can we flex roadway projects resources to maybe transit projects if that is our priority. And what the figure on the right really shows you is the trend, the different scenarios tested, and the varying degrees as compared to trend. Next slide, please. Now, to go into the three scenarios tested a little bit more. So the first was a trend. You know, this is going to be business as usual. As I said, with an emphasis on strategic intermodal systems, highways. You know, as I said, this is really not where we want to go. You know, 5% of people having access to high capacity, as I said. Now, the second scenario we tested was a regional transit scenario. This is where we went all in on a regional scale for premium transit. You know, high capacity transit on all the major corridors connecting the whole region. And then the third scenario we tested really builds upon that regional transit, where we looked at an alternative growth scenario. So we're still going to have the regional transit network, but what we'd want to do now is look at how the land use changes. Say 75% of the population and jobs were to be located, if we were to have policies that ensure that the development were located around where we're going to actually put the transit investments. So these are the different scenarios that we tested. Next slide, please. Now, what does these scenarios generate? So as you can see here, from the trend scenario, if 2045, if we just keep following the status quo, doing what we're doing now, don't change anything, by 2045, we're looking at 5% of people having access to high capacity transit from their home, and only 10% of people having access to high capacity transit from their job. Now, with the other scenario, with a robust regional transit corridor scenario, we have of course that increases. We have 20% of people having access to high capacity transit from their home, and 40% of people having access to high capacity transit from their job. Now, when you add densification and transit-oriented development along with that high-capacity transit network, then we have 35% of people having access to high-capacity transit from their home, and 50% of people having high-capacity transit from their job. So we really are going to get more utilization of the initial investment that we're making in the first place. Next slide, please. And as I said, we did a deep dive into the cost feasible plans of all the LRTPs. And what this graphic really shows is that 76% of all the projects in our cost feasible plans, all three cost feasible plans, were still going to roadway and freight projects, leaving only 14% for system management, transit, complete streets, multimodal strategies pretty much. And this just highlights that disconnect that I was mentioning earlier, that, hey, we're prioritizing multimodal, sustainability, environmental. However, when you look at the numbers and how our investment decisions are made and what we're allowed to do, it's over 3/4 of our money is still going to roadway and freight projects. Next slide, please. But we're heading in the right direction. You know, between, you know, the tri-rail extension into downtown, you know, the SMART plan connecting the whole county, and of course we have connections to the north, you know, with the North Quarter, you know, our complete streets policies and guidelines. I'd say we're making great strides as a region in towards achieving our RTP vision. Next slide. And to finish off, I really wanted just to say, like, as I said at the beginning, this document is really, it's really a call for action. You know, we wanted to come up with a framework. So as the first step to make is we had to create policies that really lay the groundwork for where we want to go as a region. And we as a committee, we've decided that the 4 policies we want to focus on, you know, is regional transit, supportive infrastructure. You know, we want policies that address the need for high capacity transit to connect to a region. You know, we want to look at new revenue resources. You know, we understand that resources for transit are dwindling away. So, you know, we're at a point now where we as a region, we need to start looking for new resources. And then, of course, you want to have policies that address complementary land use. You know, if we're going to make these investments, if we're going to find new investments, if we're going to be building this regional major transportation network, you know, let's get the most of it, most out of it. Let's intensify and densify the corridors along these transit networks to make sure that, you know, it's serving a lot of people. And then we want to look into flexible revenue spending. You know, just to touch again, I think with our region, we want to be able to have the ability to say, you know what, this is what we're prioritizing. We're prioritizing transit or, you know, bike and ped. You know, we want to be able to use the money in how we're prioritizing. And I think that's really the main part of the document is really a call for action. And next slide, I think that's it. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to share the actual documents, or if there's anything I can't answer, I can put you in charge of the project manager, which is Mr. Paul Calvarisi from the Broward MPO. But yeah, I'm here to take any questions.
All right, thank you for your excellent presentation, Tuari. Very important. I'm going to start off a question with one. I have many, but I'm going to ask the most important one, and then I'm going to open up the floor, and I'll come back after that. Chances are I'll be able to piggyback off of some of the other questioners. My first question, which is very important, do you require CTAC resolution for this item so I could activate Mr. Fishman?
It would be nice to have a resolution just to show the support. We don't require a resolution. I really wanted to do this. We're bringing this to the board at the September 24th meeting, and our director, and we wanted to bring it to all our citizens committees before we brought it to the board. A resolution from the committee will of course show a lot more support, and that's what we need, because as I said, this is a document that we want to bring to Tallahassee. We want to show that even though we have 3 different TPOs or MPOs in a region, we do coordinate and we are making steps in the same direction. So this is something we want to bring to Tallahassee as a policy document. So the more support we get from it, you know, especially from the citizen committees, from the different stakeholders, is the better it would be.
All right. Mr. Chance, do you have any comment on that?
No comment.
Actually, to the chair, I have a question. What exactly, based on this presentation, would you like us to make a resolution saying?
You could just have a resolution saying that you support the adoption of the document, or support the direction that the document is heading. I think that's the only. I could reach out to Broward MPO as to see what resolution they will be looking for. They're the project managers of this, but I could get back to you on that. But as I said, we don't necessarily need a resolution. You know, it's really up to the committee.
Well, if we're doing a resolution, sir, we're doing it right now. So going in touch with the Broward County is going to be too late unless you do it within the next 5 minutes. But I have an idea of what you're looking for, and I'll come up with a resolution if that's what you're looking for. But if you want us to match Broward County, then you'd have to get back to me really quickly before.
No. Mr. Fishman, you could, if you have an idea, I'll be fine. We don't have to match Broward County. As I said, there's no actual need for a resolution. I really wanted to do this as a courtesy. I wanted to inform the group and keep the group up to date. And I'd be sincerely appreciative if we do have a resolution. So anything you come up with, I'd be very happy with that. And I'd be very appreciative also.
It's just a supportive resolution. That's
just
all you need.
That's it.
So, Mr. Fishman, that just frame it around the support, that CTAC supports the presentation and and this particular mission, which brings up another question. I did see a little blurb in your second to last slide about Virgin Trains. How does that weave into this?
Well, that would be, I guess, a part of the Northeast Corridor. So that would be one of the Northeast Corridor, and that we're working, right? That's actually one of the major regional projects that we're working on. So we're working on SFRTA, Broward, and RTPO with that project right now. But it's not in the RTPS yet because it hasn't been finalized. But that is one of the major projects for our region that we're currently working on with our various agencies and the CTAC with.
So in that regard, why don't we include Monroe County down all the way to the Keys? Because there seems to be a lot of traffic demand in that particular direction. So why is it just the Tri-County and not Monroe County?
That I could get back to you. When I could get back to the project manager, we could get back.
And finally, seeing that I have the floor, I didn't see anything regarding first and last mile infrastructure. And in order to make our transit system a lot more effective, it seems to me that we need to have some infrastructural component for first and last mile. So did you guys give that any consideration, or did I miss something?
In the docket, they had, I'm sure, I'd have to look through it. I don't know if they specifically addressed first and last miles, the first and last mile issue. I could go back through your document and get back, but I don't know if that was specifically addressed in the document.
I'd like to hear some feedback on that, because that's critically important. So, but other than that, I'm going to open up the floor for any other questions. I can see either your raise hands or digitally or physically. Either way, I'm not seeing any right now.
Kelly.
Yeah, Mr. Kelly.
Oh, okay, there you go.
A good presentation, Mr. Edmondson. Very good. Let me ask you though, in the big scheme of things, what is your end game in this presentation becoming into fruition? I mean, what is it that I guess would be ideal for you moving forward towards 2045 as this plan is estimated to be?
Well, yeah, this plan is really, as I said, a call for action. You know, this is a plan we want to bring to the state. We want to bring this to Tallahassee. We want to show that, hey, even though we're three different TPOs, you know, have three different priorities, have three different funding pots, we're coordinating because this is where we want to go together as a region. So we want to start having influence on how we spend our money, you know, where we go, and pretty much how we move forward, not just as a single TPO, but as a region. So that's really the end goal, is to get that support from the state and to show our coordination.
Okay.
And our unified voice. It's really a unified voice.
Okay. All right. Got it.
All right. I see Ms. Wright. Go ahead. Do you recognize Ms. Wright?
Thank you. I'm just curious, prior to this committee's change in who we are, we would periodically meet with the Tri-County equivalent of CTAC, okay, which you're talking about here. I'm wondering if there will be occasions for us to get together as a total group anytime in the future.
Is that for me or is that for the CTAC?
Well, it's for you. I don't know who it's for. I was just curious.
Well, yeah, I could take that on, Naomi. Well, right now we have our staff and that coordinate together. That's how this document is created. Now, the citizens are able to look at it right now. You know, we're looking at it right now, and they're bringing it to other groups as well, citizen groups as well. So us coming together physically like we used to years ago, I don't really see that happening right now.
I wasn't thinking physically. I was thinking virtually, just like we're doing right now, because sometimes it helps to get input from others, you know.
Well, they're getting input now. They're getting input now from everybody, but
they're getting input, but we are not talking to each other. you know.
Okay, Ms. Wright, just so we coordinate things, could we not be going back and forth? Let Mr. Chance complete his answer and then you can chime in so we have some order, please.
All right. Yeah. So I don't really see that us doing that, coordinating like that again, because we did, like you said, we did that many years ago when we came together. But we would meet once a year or twice a year. But this is a document that staff is able to coordinate now together. So they meet on a constant basis, and then they bring it to us so we can see it. Well, I should say to CTAC, so CTAC can see it. But I do understand what you're saying, Naomi.
And I thought we made a point earlier that the chat box is off limits, but I saw something appear there. So let me see.
Trying to get through the chat. That is Paul. He that's who Tuari referred to earlier as the project manager. He is here, and he is an attendee. So he's just letting you know that he's here as well.
No, hold on a
Yes.
sec.
Can we?
It
Yeah.
was
Paul,
It was married child. Married child, you need to speak up rather than use a chat box. As a matter of fact, let me say this, the chat box is off limits. So anybody that needs to speak needs to get my attention and be recognized and speak, even if they're on a telephone or something like that. The chat box is off limits.
Yes, I have a question, Chair.
Yes.
And so I'm very grateful for this coordination, and I'm excited about the move towards transit. And so I was wondering, one of the images showed that currently we only spent 14% of the total budget for these kinds of infrastructure improvements, which need to be increased. So what is the target? If we were to start aggressively implementing transit and bike ped improvements, and will that be bound to the three counties?
Okay. Great question. I have the project manager, Mr. Calvarisi, on the line. Paul, can we allow Mr. Calvarisi to speak? He's actually one that could answer all these questions. Can we grant him permission to speak?
Hi.
Yeah, if he's going to assist you, I have no objection to that if the question was directed to me.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Carnegie. Paul, can we get in Mr. Paul Calvarisi?
Hi. Thank you for Paul for promoting me. I'm sorry. Could you re-ask that question? There was a little bit of audio confusion while I plugged in my headset.
Sure. I was encouraged in seeing that it seemed that the recommendation was to really step up funding for transit and bike ped from 14% to a higher percentage. So what would that percentage be, and would that be bound and coordinated by the three counties so that the improvements can be seamlessly dovetailed as you go from county to county?
So that is a great question. And if you don't mind, I'm going to use yours to answer a previous question from Dr. Claudius. And first off, Paul Calvarisi, Broward MPO, I'm the project manager for this round of the Regional Transportation Plan. Tuari, thank you. That was a fantastic presentation you gave. So going back as far as what the increase was, Tuari pointed out that if you look at our unfunded projects, the vast majority of them are for bike ped and transit. And what I like to explain is that as the MPOs, we get MPOs, TPOs, TPA, we get paid in gift cards. We don't get cash. And the majority of our gift cards are for road improvements. So part of the reason that we did this experiment through the scenario planning was to see what could we, if that funding was unbound by restrictions, what would our system look like? I don't know if you know this, but in Broward County, we can't build any more roads. We are out of space.
Mm-hmm.
So we have all of this funding to build new roads and no room to physically build new roads. So we have to pose this question of, well, what do we do with this funding? It's not fair to our taxpayers to just return it. And I know that Miami is approaching the same thing, and our neighbors to the north in Palm Beach have a really tough decision to make because they have some of the oldest neighborhoods in South Florida and also some of the newest. So there's just that disconnect. Now, as far as the coordination for our transit system, that's why we have organizations like the CTAC and the RTAC to make sure there's that seamless transition. Believe it or not, there's actually very few roads between the counties that actually intersect. They're your major state roads. So for our Palm Beach and Broward, it's very easy to coordinate because it's all the same FDOT district. Between Miami and Broward, it's a little bit different because it's two FDOT districts, but they work together, and so do both of our MPOs. So in the end, yes, the goal is to make sure that this is one seamless system, because as part of the report shows, despite our borders, our many borders, our counties, our cities, etc., our residents don't care. They drive through South Florida as if it's one continuous neighborhood.
I have a follow-up question. And so here in Dade County, we're still continuing with highway widening. And I wonder in the pandemic and moving forward, whether that will be required. I mean, so is that a question that you're currently grappling with in order to better fund the other stuff?
So this plan was actually just approved August 7th, which means it was pretty much wrapped up many months before that, before the pandemic became what it is. So all of our scenario planning was done pre-pandemic. What we were posing was the question of what happens. So what happens if we don't do things the same way we've been doing them? What do those results look like? And through the scenario planning, we determined that, oh, we like these results better. So how can we get to this new better? As far as the highway widening in Miami-Dade County, I think one of the TPO staff members could probably speak to that project or those projects and those priorities much better than I can.
Okay. Did that answer your question, Marshall?
Not really, but okay.
Yeah, in the interest of time, we're going to have to move on if you have
Move on, yes, correct.
All right. Sir, you mentioned that you're going to answer one of my questions. I'm not sure I heard the answer.
So I'm sorry, yeah, you had a question about first last mile. This
Yes.
regional plan spans all three counties, and we were really looking at a 50,000 foot level. The first last mile policies were for the individual MPOs, and then to work with their respective municipalities to develop those policies and implement them.
So is that being coordinated? And do you have any 50,000 foot kind of vision of that, what that looks like?
In order for the ideal scenario, which includes land use and the high capacity transit network, we make the assumption that the first last mile connections are there so that you can bring people closer to destinations, and you end up getting a result where you actually remove people from the vehicle, because then a trip now becomes a comfortable walking and biking trip. So we make the assumption that the MPOs are free and have the ability to implement those first last mile policies.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that an assumption is a good way to deal with that. I think there's good statistics and realities on the ground that first and last mile is not efficient, not effective, and it seems as though we've got a very unorganized system out there. Like, for example, what's going on in Miami is not consistent with what's going on in Coral Gables, and so on and so forth. It seems to me that if you're the coordinating body, that you probably need to have a subgroup that is dealing with first and last mile issues, because unless and until that particular part of the infrastructure is improved, you're not going to be getting efficacy and efficiency in the bigger system, the rails, the buses, and the Virgin trains and all of that. And there are very good connecting points for first and last mile to work off of destination, well, I should say origin and destination points. in those heavier systems, if you follow what I'm saying.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. This system is only as strong as its weakest link, and that's why. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess the final question is, what efforts are being made to perhaps, as a suggestion, create a subgroup that could focus on these elements of the infrastructure so that we could we could improve the efficacy of the overall system?
So that is definitely something that the RTAC, the Regional Transportation Technical Advisory Committee, can tackle. We do have regular monthly meetings where we coordinate. All 3 LRTPs are coordinated on this one. And as Tawari said, as we go to Tallahassee and we look at these policies, one of them is the first last mile connection. And we bring this to Tallahassee to make sure that the funding is available to create that system.
So you're going to take this back?
Yes.
All right. Sounds good to me. Any other questions?
Through the chair, you have Susan Shine.
I'm not seeing Susan on my screen. Okay, thank you for bringing that up. I got, she's not appearing on my screen. I guess I need to scroll. Okay, never mind. Susan, please go ahead. I'm sorry, I missed you.
I'm sorry I came in late, but I loved the prioritization of public transportation. I'm going to piggyback on what Mari Shail said. Because you mentioned in your, Tawari, in your presentation that we can flex the appropriations. Can you give me a couple of, I mean, A, sooner than later, so that I live long enough to benefit by it? And B, can you give me a couple of examples of how that would work?
Well, I know one of the things we're looking at is, as I said, using formulas, the FDOT formulas. A lot of the funding that we get now within a region has to be used for freight and roadway projects. It's not as if we as a region have the option to use them for transit or use them for bicycle or use them for first and last mile connections. We don't even have that option. So what we want to do is we want to bring this document, this unified voice for our region and say, hey, you know what, we want that ability. We want that freedom to be able to say, hey, you know, we have, these are the funds available to us. Why can we not spend it on these bicycle and these? So that's that we're trying to change the policy. It's really
okay. So we don't have
one at a time, please. One at a time.
Okay.
Suzanne, let him finish, and then you can go back in. Tawari, were you finished?
Yeah. No, I think I covered the point. So as I said, it's really the main point of the document is we really want to change a policy that allows us that freedom to really go in the direction that we want to go as a region. So that's the step that we are right now.
All right, Suzanne.
Okay. Yeah, so I that perfectly answers my question. You can't give me an example because we're not allowed to do it yet, is what you're saying. But I love it. I love the idea that we can take money from roads and put it towards public transportation or bike paths or whatever we decide to do. I'm 1,000% in favor of that.
Yeah, and as we assess the system, you know, like given a situation now, we may realize that a lot of these investments that were slated for road projects may not even be needed anymore. Like now with the situation that we're in, studies have shown, you know, bicycle pedestrian movement have gone up, you know, probably like 20-30%. So there's a lot more demand on these multimodal ways to get around. But if we don't have the flexibility to fund them, you know, we're just kind of caught with our hands behind our back. So that's really what we want to change, and we want to show that even though we're 3 separate MPOs, separate entities, we all have separate priorities, you know, separate pots of money, that we represent the same region, and we all, as a region, want to head in the same direction.
Thank you. You
All
did
right.
a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
So any other, please help me, Mr. Chance, because I'm not seeing all of the videos on my screen. Anybody else out there with a digital or a physical hand?
I don't know if there's any more questions from members, but I just wanted to announce that Lee Swollen is in attendance, and also too that
Yeah, I was going to deal with that after this item. We still need to clean up this item, and in between items, I was going to deal with the attendance issue because I didn't even know that Susan Shine was here. She's not on my roll call, so yeah, I'm going to deal with that right after this item is wrapped up. Okay.
Perfect. You do have a question from the audience, Ronald Fulton.
Okay, please unmute Ronald. Lisa.
She's working on it now, Chair.
Is he unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, please go ahead, sir.
Hello?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay. I'm sorry for taking so long. I wasn't clear on that, the Monroe part, because when I went to several of these meetings years ago, that was a part of it. And it was, I'm not clear on that part there.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ron Fulton. I raised that question, and I think that's going to be a take back. They got to take it back and deal with it at the highest possible level. So there was no answer for that as of right now because it hasn't been effectively looked at. And maybe Tuari could just chime in and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm researching now. I'm thinking it might be because Monroe might not have an MPO that they have, but I'll verify and double check.
All right, Mr. Fulton, is that good enough for you?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
I just confirmed, sorry, Dr. Claudius. I just confirmed the reason is that Monroe does not have an MPO. So that is the answer to the Monroe question. Like, whereas Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach all have MPOs, the Monroe doesn't have an MPO.
But logically, I have a problem with that. They got roads and transportation facilities going to Monroe. So should we not find some mechanism to deal with that, even if they don't have an MPO? Maybe the MPO criteria is based on population, but I think it should also be based on origin and destination.
True. No, that's a great point. That's a great point.
All right. So that's a take back. So there's something for you guys to go back and look at from the 50,000 feet level.
Will do.
All right. Any other questions before we pick up on the resolution that Mr. Fishman has been considering? Any other questions? Could you help me, Mr. Chance? Any hands out there that I can't see?
At the time, Chair, I don't see any hands at this
Okay,
time.
then I'll close the item and ask Mr. Fishman to please read the resolution so we can take a roll call vote on that.
Okay, well, I'll offer this for, consideration. I have the CTAC supports the direction of the 2045 Southeast Florida Transportation Plan and its development of transportation projects, which should include first and last mile recommendations.
I'm 100% good with that. And I'm very appreciative. Thank you. Thank you to the committee.
All right.
Is there a second?
So,
I'm making that motion, so you need a second.
okay, is there a second?
I second.
Who's that?
Tony.
Mr. Ray's second. Mr. Fishman is a mover. Mr. Ray's is a seconder. And I hear some muttering in the background. Someone trying to get my attention?
Yeah, but hold on a second. Hold on a second. Hold on a second, Chair. You said you have a first and you got a second, right?
Yes, Mr. Ray's second.
Okay, now you can go ahead and open up for questions or any questions.
Yes. So this is going to be a roll call vote. So all those in favor will say yay, and those opposed will say nay, based on the roll call that Mr. Chance will now conduct.
Okay.
Mary Chile had her hand up.
Yeah, but we're about to vote right now. We
Oh.
already
I
had
was
time
going to
to-
suggest an edit. I was just going to say strongly support.
No, leave it. I don't want any amendments.
All right, thank you. We're in the middle of a vote right now, everybody. Thank you. Alexander Adams, Maya Child,
Yes, strongly support.
Alan Fishman,
Support.
Susan Gouache.
Support.
Just say yay or nay, please. Benjamin Hendrick, Jasmine Johnson, Marlon Kelly Sr.
Yes, I support.
Yay or nay, please. Yay or nay.
You said support.
Antonio Reyes.
Yay.
Susan Shine.
Yay.
Lee Swerlin.
Yay.
Naomi Wright.
Yes.
Vice Chair Daniel Iglesias.
Yay.
Dr. Claudius Carnegie.
Yeah.
The item passes.
All right. So thank you, Mr. Fishman, for your input and support as usual. Thank you all for respectfully processing this particular item. I hope that Tawari is very happy with that. And we're going to move on. And first of all, before we move to the next item, I was surprised by a few additions in the attendees. So could you reconcile that list, Mr. Coordinator, for the record?
Yes, I have. Thank you, Chair.
So you have everyone?
Yeah, I've acknowledged Lee Swerlin, and I already had Susan Shine.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. So with that said, we're going to move on to the next item, which is item 8.
And this is requested by Dr. Claudius Carnegie, the chair.
Oh, okay. And well, thank you for processing. I remember that request. That's quite a few months ago, right? Thank you for processing it. And this item is, let me verify here. Does this item require a resolution? I guess not. It's just informational, right?
It's just the information item, Chair.
Okay. So Mr. Fishman, you can take a break on this one. All right. It is Transportation Outreach Planner Tool. And the presenter is Ms. Elizabeth Rockwell, Miami-Dade TPO Chief Communication Officer. Ms. Rockwell, you got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Mr. Chair and committee members. It's wonderful to see you all, as always. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for requesting this item. We're going to talk this evening about the Miami-Dade TPO Transportation Outreach Planner. I have with me Jennifer Fu from Florida International University. She's the head of the GIS Center. So I'm going to do the introduction, and then I'm going to let her take the presentation away. So next slide, please. Real quick, some background and access information. Of course, this goes back all the way to 2003. There was a 2001 federal certification of the Miami-Dade MPO at the time, where they received some, suggestions based on their, we received corrective actions, which is not something you ever want to receive as an MPO. So back in 2001 at the federal certification, they received some corrective actions for public involvement. And in 2003, FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, suggested that the MPO develop a program that looked at community profiles. Well, we don't do profiles, and that was back in 2003, so we changed it to community characteristics. So we basically developed, I was hired in 2003 to fix these corrective actions, along with Paul Chance, who was then hired 6 months later. So Paul and I have been for some time, as you all know. And so this is where this tool comes from. We're very proud of it. And it's just become a multi-year project that has just developed and grown with the FIU Center. We look at social cultural effects. We ensure that a community is properly identified before we go out and we start a project, so that we know what the history is, what the business climate, and so forth in those communities. Again, FIU Metropolitan Center came on first, and then the GIS Center, Jennifer Fu, came on. So Jennifer's been with us for about 16 years, 15, 16 years as well. And she has worked with her students and herself in creating and developing and morphing this tool into what it is today. It is a web-based tool. There are a lot of planners that use it, and public involvement officers and consultants that use it when they need to produce plans for us. So we have used this for our long-range transportation plan. This has been used for the Transportation Improvement Program. And it also complements the FDOT's efficient transportation decision-making process, which is a whole other process that could take a whole other presentation. So you can access the tool by going directly to the link on your screen, or you can go to our website. You can navigate to the Tools tab and then go stroll all the way down the bottom. But as I always say, distractions await, because there's some other really cool tools along the way to our tool that could be distracting. Next slide, please. I'm going to do the purpose and the clients, and then I'm going to go ahead and let Jennifer come in. So the purpose, again, and our clients is that we provide tools to access the information about the social, economic, transportation, and community characteristics of a community. And we recommend strategies to reach out to the public based upon those community characteristics. That's very important. Again, it's a geospatial decision-making tool, assisting tool, and it's suited for transportation and community planners alike. Next slide. I'm going to go ahead and let Jennifer Fu from Florida International University, my alma mater, and obviously Dr. Carnegie's, where he works. So we'll go ahead and let Jennifer take over. Jennifer?
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking your time and sitting this session. I'm going to introduce this tool. We basically have 3 components for you to really plan and understanding your community at all geographic levels, and also come up with public outreach strategy tools. So first, I will start. Next slide, please. The first component is the customized demographic reporting tool. And this is a web mapping-based tool. So there are 3 levels of geography that you can pick from. One is municipality, that includes cities, villages, and towns. And another one is census and also metropolitan center defined Miami-Dade County neighborhoods. The example would be Little Haiti, for example, or Airport West. So some of these neighborhood definitions are not really present in, say, census boundaries. So the smallest level of geography is the census block groups. And a lot of our researchers and consultants depend upon that level of geography because they act like Lego pieces that you make up your own micro neighborhood to size up the area and the socioeconomic profile. Next slide, please. So once you go into the customized demographic reporting tool, you'll see a map interface with very familiar background that is a Google Maps background. And the search tool also, we're using Google API for this purpose. So in this case, we picked census places that includes your cities, towns, and villages, and census-defined places. And once you click on that, you use any of your, you click on any of these boundaries, you can do either individual census place or a combination. So you select your geography, then you can go to your demographic reporting. Next slides. And here it's a presentation of a sort of an infographic interface that gives you, first of all, navigation tools going back to the map, all navigation tools goes to the content of the data that we have pulled out. And you can export them into your format that you would like to work with. The beauty of this tool is that we have a graphic interface. If you look at top, we really extracted the census data at municipality level all the way down to 1970s. So you can look at retrospective. And of course, census, the last census was 2010. So when the 2020 census come out, this graph will extend again. And as you click on the radio bars of age, race, and all that, the graph would also change interactively. Another part of this tool, next slide, please, is that all the statistics are presented in counts and percentage format, and we compare the area of interest that you have collected based upon that 3 tiers of geography, together with the county total and together with the Florida total, so that you have an idea of how is your neighborhood compare to the county and to the state. Next, please. And in addition to the demographic content that we have just illustrated in that slide, we oftentimes our planners wanted to know, where do I hold public events and meetings to reach out our community for your transportation planning? So in this case, we have compiled a list of point of interest. As you can see, there could be a city hall, there could be university or library, or even neighborhood associations. Next slide. And from the years of feedbacks we have collected when we conducted training workshops to the planners and managers, one of the demographic information that people needed most is limited English, so they will know what type of material to plan to reach out to the community. So we then included a thematic map that shows where the limited English proficiency looks like for the whole county, so that you can also access from the map interface. Next slide, please. And the same with elderly, and that's an elderly thematic map. We seem to have some overlapping with the limited English as well. Okay, so next slide, please. And in our last scope, we have also completed a detailed vegetation and land cover classification. So this is very high resolution classification based upon the county's, the whole urban area high resolution imagery. So in this case, we have also statistics to show each individual area what their land cover looks like. For example, the tree coverage, the building environment, water, and so on. So we added that layer onto this one. Next, please. So the second main component, in addition to the statistics and mapping that we have included here, is we have compiled 36 municipality reports and 96 neighborhood reports. And that gives you historical background information, the community dynamics, transportation, characteristics, and that is supposed to supplement what you have put out from the census data and American Community Survey data. So next, please. So if you look at Miami-Dade County municipalities, and then you will get a whole full list of municipalities. And if you go to neighborhood, of course, you'll get the 96 neighborhood reports as well. Next, please. And in the newer version of the community background reports, we have included another interactive mapping component here. And in this case, the interactive mapping included, for example, the to home and to work hotspot maps, and land cover classification maps, transit, elderly, and limited English. So we want to have those layers to be clustered only for that neighborhood associated with these reports. And the other components I talked about, history, community dynamics, business landscape, and transportation characteristics, those are in text format, and they can again be exported for the planners and managers' purpose. Okay, next. The third main component is the public outreach strategies. And this one is after you have get an idea of what your community is like and the list of recommendations that we make. Next. Next slide, please. So there are different types of outreach strategies. We have educational, promotional, and civic engagement ones, and we mark them with a color scheme on that main page where you can access these strategies directly. Or, next please. Or you use a system designed, customer designed for a chosen neighborhood. In this case, for example, a user has clicked an area which is composed of these number of block groups together to form that area of interest. And for this particular area, the system then recommends to you by ranking, these are the tools that's most suitable based upon the demographic, socioeconomic profile of this neighborhood. Next, please. Oops. Actually, can we go back to the, and then on your right-hand side, there's cost and time sliding bar. You can adjust, how much money you can spend for these public events and how much time you can spend on it. And that list of ranking will then resort and based upon your time and budget allowed.
And if I may, Jennifer, this is one of the most, I think, unique aspects of this tool that excites me. The ability to move, you can't, unfortunately it's static, but to move this and to watch the rankings change and to understand that you can modify your needs based on your time and your money, that is something that we're very proud of.
And remember, this decision, of course, is based upon your social demographic profile that's pulled from that interactive mapping interface. For instance, if your neighborhood is largely non-English speaking population, then there will be suitable tools the more suitable tools that's recommended for you. And all the demographic variables that's presented in the report are taken in consideration and it's given a score and it's calculated here. So that's the end of my presentation regarding this tool. And we're ready to take any questions you may have.
Very good. Excellent presentation. It's a great planning tool. Thank you, Jennifer and Elizabeth, for making this presentation. Let me ask a couple of questions and then I'm going to go to the floor. Seeing that this is such an excellent planning tool, I was wondering, and also seeing that you're using a GIS platform, I was wondering if other layers that would include information such as WASA details and DERM details and zoning details, if those are layered or if they're integrated or if they're accessible, so those could be overlaid on some of the other important and very valuable information that you've provided for a planner that is really taking a deep dive into planning for development work or for any other industrial use.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, and this tool actually has been utilized, as Elizabeth indicated, by a wide range of community consultants and planners. And over the years, when we provided workshops, we also have collected a lot of feedbacks. And I know with Elizabeth's focus on solely transportation-related planning purpose, and all the data sort of support that whole large direction, we did over the years try to take those input without overcrowding. Sometimes when we build a tool, if we add too many things, then people sort of get distracted. So, but in the current scope and also future scope, we are planning to add a whole lot more content in here. That
Yes,
is,
they broke me. They
I can
finally
imagine.
broke me.
I can imagine. There's just so much information out there. I mean, like, just the zoning information is a big one.
Yeah, definitely. Technically speaking, yes, we can. And we are trying to, for example, add the sea level rise and climate change visualization onto this, so that the citizen can see, as a result of sea level rise from 1 to 8 feet, what road segments will be underwater. That's just giving you one example. So that has been materialized and should be available by the end of this year soon. We added some visitor and tourism data here in this past scope as well. And in the future scope, we have a whole bunch of other things that include actually the safe routes to school and many other things.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Including the smart plan layer as well, Dr. Carnegie.
Yeah. And we wanted to include, but with a focus on transportation, yes.
Yeah, and Dr. Carnegie also, and the committee, of course, the smart plan layer is now being added to hopefully address those last mile. That was from the first discussion, with our smart demonstration projects, and to identify the much needed last mile opportunities, especially for the transportation disadvantaged communities. This next 2 years is, and Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, the scope is heavily on transportation disadvantaged users, last mile, smart plan, and safe routes to school for biking and pedestrian. So yes, we are expanding. We are expanding.
And you got a nice sized budget for all of that, Elizabeth, because there's going to be a lot more money that you're going to have to put out there, because as the information gets out there about this tool, I can see where you're going to be adding layers and layers up and layers, because it's a very good planning tool.
Yes, we have money set aside. This is actually a best practice from Federal Highway Administration and FTA. I am very honored and blessed to be able to go around the country, and if not do virtual presentations with Jennifer. I have traveled to the New York MPO and given the presentation and such places. So yes, FHWA is very supportive of this tool.
Very good. Very
Yes.
good. Good work. Good work. Any other questions? Could somebody, Mr. Chance, help me if I can't see all of the hands or all of the inputs?
Mr. Fulton has a question, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Fulton, I guess. Lisa, could you open his mic, please?
I have one too when he's done.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Let's let the members go first through the chair.
Sorry.
Okay, we'll be back.
Who's that?
That was Marlon Kelly.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Kelly. You're recognized.
And then we'll have the attendees for the audience go.
Yeah.
Great presentation, great tool to use. Just a couple of questions in terms of how often will these data information be updated as thing goes?
Well,
go ahead, Jennifer.
There are multiple layers of data involved, as you can see. So, for instance, the census and demographic data, we try to go with, to supplement the 2010 census data, we used 2015 5-year American Community Survey data. And we are soon also placing the 2019 American Community Survey data before the 2020 census come out. We anticipated 2020 census products actually will come out 2 years after 2020. So that's around 2022. So in between, we're gonna have 2019 American Community Survey data out there. For example, the land cover map that we have created, that is 2015 imagery. And currently we are working on the 2019 imagery. So you will have that refreshed as well. So other data, as we see, if there are you know, state or federal data that has more current version, we try to plug in and get them updated. Yes.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, accurately. As far as using certain indexes to obtain some information demographically, is it broken down to where it can go straight to zip code and just identify the demographic within the zip code?
As I mentioned, the smallest unit, which is even smaller than the zip code, is census block groups. So we have been using, you can always, in the past, our consultant has just been selecting the individual census block groups that is within a given zip code to form the zip code demographic information. So we are following the block groups as our smallest Lego piece, basically.
Yeah. Okay. And the block groups, just real quickly. Yeah. Block groups are identified as what again?
Block groups, let's go back to,
well,
okay. Let me see if I have a block groups here.
I don't want to take up too much time.
Okay, actually here, let's stop right here.
Okay.
This information, for example, you see the smaller the block groups, the denser the population.
Right.
Because census has a regulation saying once your population exceeds to X number of people, that block needs to be divided again into half. So 2020 census block come out, you will have certain areas that you will have a split of the existing block. Okay. So in this case, we use the block groups simply because they are one of the smallest unit that contains still a full range of census data, and you know it's a better unit for us to construct to give us flexibility to determine area of interest. Okay.
Through the chair, Lisa, can you mute Ronald Fulton at this time? We get a little bit of feedback from until we're ready for him. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it, Jennifer. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Are you done, Mr. Kelly?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Are there any other board members?
Yeah, my child.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Jennifer and Elizabeth, for a wonderful presentation. I was just curious whether the general public has access to the GIS data so that we can better learn about these block groups and just our neighborhoods.
Yes, this website and the URL is completely public, and we have been promoting both from the FIU end and also from the TPO end. And as I mentioned, even our sociology or international relations or political science students are using this tool when they're doing the research. So the key point is that we all know that census data can get very complex, and or any other geographic data. So our goal is really trying to transition very complex data into digestible way, visual way, infographic way, that the end users do not have to be bogged down by how to massage the data and process data, but be able to, use the output of this interactive reporting and be able to make decision. So yes, they're completely publicly available.
To piggyback on that,
we prepare them in different formats. You can use directly from the web, or you can export them to a spreadsheet and do your own analysis. So yes.
Is there any special access details that you'd want to share with us to access this?
As Elizabeth pointed out, there's 2 URL at the very beginning. You can simply go to this project website, and the best way to look at it is to click on the tutorial, and the tutorial gives you a detailed walkthrough. So, oftentimes people go to a website and they just click a few times and then they realize, they assume that's how it works, and you don't really fully explore the functionality or benefit from the functionality that this web tool offers. So by looking through the tutorial, the user can really get a lot more out of it. And the tutorial is in PDF format, is not very long. And so that's what I would recommend public users to start with.
So the access point then is through TPO and FIU, and what keywords would we put in to actually find it rather than trying to scrub these web?
I think if you just Google transportation outreach planner, and
That's
if you
good.
want to, and you should find this right away.
Thank you. That's what I was asking for.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So are there any other questions, Mr. Chance, from the board? I can't see everybody.
I'm just looking right now, Chair. Does anybody have any more questions? Just making sure that, okay, I don't see any more questions from any of our members. We have to open the floor to Ronald Fulton if you want to, Chair.
Yes, Lisa, please just open the mic for Mr. Fulton.
I think I'm open.
Okay, Mr. Fulton, please go ahead. We're hearing you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. A fabulous presentation. I just had one quick question. Do they break that down by district?
What do you mean by district? Like city?
The commission district.
Okay.
Mr. Fulton, no, we have not broken it down by commission district because, we are the TPO governing board and we don't operate through commission districts. All of our board members are general purpose. So we don't have authorization to put in the commission districts in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I asked, because when we were working on something else, it was a matter of letting the different commissioners know how it would affect them and that sort of thing. That's why I asked. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, and Mr. Fulton, that's a very good question. That's been asked before. But remember, we do have 25 TPO board members, so no districts.
So then let's narrow that down. Do you have it, the TPO districts delineated?
No, because there are 4 governor appointees and they don't have districts. There are no districts. All TPO board members are countywide. When they sit on the TPO governing board, they are not necessarily, they take off their district hats.
Okay, no district limitations. You're countywide.
That's correct.
Got you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Fulton, did that answer your question? He's muted. Okay, I guess he's satisfied.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions?
I don't see any other questions right now, Chair.
Okay, well, again, I'd like to thank both Jennifer and Elizabeth for an excellent presentation, and you did a fantastic job in answering the questions. I learned a lot, and this caught my eye quite some time ago, and that's why I had posed a question to Mr. Chance to see if we could get a little expose, and you all did a very fine job. Now I'm going to go taking a deep dive in this just to better understand it, better learn how to better use it, and I'm going to find some use for it. And thank you very much for the presentation. So with that said, this is not an item that required any resolution. It was an information item, so we're going to move on from there. Thank you all. And we're going to move on to item 9, which is the second public comment item. So if Lisa could please open up the microphones for those people who are not on my screen, and I'll give a few seconds to see if there are any public who wishes to make a comment. And if there's none, we're going to move on. Any interest so far?
No, Chair. I don't see any hands raised or anything like that.
Okay, Lisa, please mute. And we're going to move on to the next item 10, which is the chair's report. And I have a very brief report today. And the first item is, as usual, the Sunshine Ethics Training. If you have not taken that within the past 5 years, and use 5 years as a guideline, you need to get a refresher. I would recommend that you get a refresher. The way things are rapidly changing in the various sunshine laws and in the legislature. So please bear that in mind. All new members, and if you have not taken this training within the past 5 years, I would recommend that you enroll and engage in this training. Thank you very much for that. And then the next item is our next CTAC meeting will be Wednesday, October 7th. Is that going to be within the virtual timeline? Is that meeting going to be virtual or face-to-face?
As of right now, Chair, we're still waiting for a message from the governor. So I'll keep everybody posted.
Okay. All right. So that's it for the chair's report.
Through the chair, I do want to add, as I said in the beginning, I just want to reiterate again, because I know we had some new people who came on a little bit late. There are 6 positions that will be changing, the TPO board members that will be changing. As you know, elections are going on, and there are 6 positions that will be affected. Therefore, according to our bylaws, that an appointee's term shall automatically expire when the appointing board member leaves office or the appointing board member's term of office expires. So we do have 6 CTAC members that are in jeopardy of that, and I will name it off one more time for those who just came on late, and I will be contacting you after we hear from legal for next steps. And I will be contacting you next week. So that is Marlon Kelly Sr., also Naomi Wright, Dr. Claudius Carnegie, Lee Swarlin, Mai Child, and Antonio Reyes.
All right. Thank you for that follow-up, Mr. Coordinator. Very important. All right. So that concludes the chair's report. Moving on to the next item, which is new transportation business. Are there any proposals or suggestions or questions? 30 more seconds, and then we're going to move on. I have none, other than what was brought up during the 2 items that we dealt with earlier. So hearing none, we're going to entertain a motion for adjournment. And
actually, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Through the chair. Hello.
Yes, you're recognized, Mr. Swordlin. You're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you. Have we heard anything recently or for a while about the water taxis? I mean, has that project been dropped completely, or is anyone still working on that?
Through the chair, I can check into that. I know there was some projects done a long time ago, and I hadn't
heard about it. We haven't heard about it in a long time, and I was just curious if there was anything happening with it or if it's just been dropped.
So, Mr. Swerdon, are you asking for a presentation from the relevant parties, or you just have a question that you need answered?
Well, we could start by finding out if there's anything going on, and then if there is, then yes, I would like to hear a report.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chance, you got that?
I'll look into that. Yes.
Thank
All
you.
right. Any other?
Yeah, one more little question regarding the last presentation. Is it possible for us to get that link to that GIS?
Yeah, she did. She did say it, but Mr.
It's on the
Chance, if
screen,
you
but
could send an email out on that, that would be great.
there you go. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Any other? Mr. Chance, am I missing anyone there?
I don't see anybody that has anything else. Let me
All
just.
right. So with that, I would entertain a motion for the adjournment of this meeting at 7:06. Anyone?
I make a motion.
Thank you. Is that Mr. Swerden?
Yes.
Second.
Who second?
Second, Kelly.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes, sir.
And I guess I'm going to call a question and everybody's going to say yay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all very much
Thank you.
for attending this meeting, for being here, and for being so very active in providing your inputs and showing a lot of mutual respect and cooperation. So I would say good night and ask you all to stay safe, stay healthy, be blessed, be productive until we meet again in October. And Mr. Chance will clarify if the October meeting is virtual or face-to-face. And of course, in your new building, is that where we would be meeting if it's face-to-face, or we're going to be meeting in the commission chambers? Did the commission chambers move too?
Yes, the chambers did move as well, but I will keep you posted on all of that, Chair, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you. Good night, you all.